MPs and peers. A motoring campaigners last night backed the Sun's 5-point manifesto calling for drivers to be protected from a rush to net zero before the country is ready. This is the Give Us a Break plan, calling for politicians to stop imposing pricey ULEZ charging schemes and disruptive low-traffic neighbourhood zones. Last night, leading Tories said current net zero targets are unachievable. There are also calls for the 2030 ban on new diesel and petrol cars to be delayed until the nation is prepared and drivers can afford to switch to electric vehicles. Is there a war on motorists? It's also an issue of charging points as well. Let's speak to Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration, and Donnachadh McCarthy, a climate columnist. Of course, afternoon to you both. Alan, do you sense there's a war on motorists? Afternoon to you.
There absolutely has been a war on motorists. It's a war on the public. We've seen it across the country. We've seen it with low traffic neighbourhoods, which are road closures that came in primarily during lockdown, emergency traffic orders, shutting roads down, freedom and mobility restricted. We've seen it with low emission zones, the ultra low emission zone in London, where the majority of people have said they do not want it in the consultation. It was ignored. ANPR cameras were put in anyway. We've then had lies told based on extrapolating information from something that wasn't said in Imperial College, about 4,000 deaths. It's highly unpopular. And at the same time, there's been an attempt to pretend that these road closures and these traffic measures are somehow improving things. Actually, what they're doing is that they're pushing, and on top of damaging businesses and families, they're pushing traffic out to main arteries, increasing the traffic there and pollution as it happens. And so what we've seen is a kind of contempt for the public who've said they haven't wanted it, with the consultations around the country in places like Oxford and Bristol and around the country. So ignoring responses from them, and in Bath, moving ahead anyway, charging. It's about money and it's about control. And you've got someone like Mike Carter in Haringey saying we're going to make it as painful as possible. Hackney want to make 75% of the roads closed. All of these things don't really take into account how life needs to be for people, how deliveries, how women late at night need to get about, how you have, elderly, disabled, and just the idea that we're not living in feudal times. You pay some kind of fine to go from one hamlet to another. So it's utterly wrong, and it's fantastic now that so many voices are being made heard around the country. We just had an event in Edinburgh, hundreds of people in the room. People are challenging this up and down the country, standing together. And politicians are listening, finally.
Donnachadh McCarthy, afternoon to you, Donnachadh. I'm going to take a bit of a punt here that you couldn't disagree more with everything you've just heard.
Well, to be fair, Colin, we have watched this language from the Sun over the last 20 years about this so-called war on motorists. In a war, people are killed. I have never seen a driver killed by a pedestrian, an old age pensioner on their bike, or by somebody poisoning them deliberately. What we have is actually a war on kids, headed by people like this gentleman and by Victoria Newton at the editor of The Sun, waging war on kids. What are they doing? They want to increase...
Who's waging a war on kids, by the way, Donnachadh?
Sorry?
Who's waging a war on kids?
Sun, with this new campaign.
Why is it waging a war on kids? Just explain.
Give me three examples. Three examples.
Okay.
First of all, she's proposing that to attack the clean air proposals in London and other cities. 12 kids a year die of asthma in London. There's 500,000 asthmatics.
Yes. It's not linked. There's no evidence of linking that to cars. That's the first thing.
Sorry. The University of Imperial College have made a direct link between pollution and extreme
pollution. Yes, but not necessarily.
And it's been found also in
the London Underground is full of guff and nonsense. You've been down there, Donnachadh.
If you actually think that actually it's okay for kids to breathe air poisoned by cars, I don't know what plans you're on, Colin.
So that's just it's Ian, by the way, not Colin. But anyway, let that slip for 1 second. We've only spoken 10,000 times, Donnachadh. In terms of, I mean, this is an argument to ban all cars, then surely?
No, it's not. It's actually to clean up the air. And the second point of how it's a war on kids is actually low traffic neighbourhoods are policies that actually stop HGVs and cabs using family streets as restaurants. And the idea of the government and the Sun want to reopen restaurants through family streets that triple the crashes in them. The research from Imperial College and University of Westminster says you triple the crashes if you reopen them. And the third area where it's a war on kids is actually that the Sun wants to destroy action to clean up carbon pollution, which we have seen across the planet in the last couple of months with the hottest temperature, Ian, in 125,000 years. Roads on fire. Canada is having unprecedented wildfires right across it. And so the idea that...
I'll tell you what, it was bloody cold this morning when I woke up in Sevenoaks, Donnachadh, I have to say.
Of course it was, because the jet stream...
How have we dodged that one?
Ian, you are more intelligent and have more... Ian, you have more intelligence than I do. And you know that, actually...
Alan, I'll come back to you in 1 second. Donnachadh, just finish that point.
Yeah, Ian, you know more than I do that actually weather and climate are different. And we know that the international community, scientific community, says that the climate is radically, terrifyingly changing. Do you deny that we had the hottest day ever in 125,000 years?
So it has been that hot before then?
Yes, over 125,000 years ago.
And we're still here?
When we had higher carbon emissions, and humanity has only been on the planet.
So here we are talking about, it's okay, we'll charge them £12.50. So we'll carry on doing all these things, but we'll just charge them £12.50. None of this makes any sense. But rather than making accusations...
It does make sense.
But rather than making accusations and calling people child killers, which is
like the 50 kids are killed by drivers every year. 50 kids are killed by drivers.
That would be an argument. I mean, Alan, sorry to interject, but Donnachadh, that would be an argument to ban lots of things, wouldn't it?
It's to actually make them safer, which is what low traffic neighbourhoods do, and 20-mile-per-hour zones.
No, what you actually want is you want to shut the roads down, because if they're killing kids, then you want to get rid of them in their entirety. So make up your mind. Otherwise, you're a...
I want to make the road safer. You want to make it more dangerous.
This goes into absolute ridiculous situation, right? What we've got is a situation where we're being told all these claims as an attempt to shut down mobility. Now, what's actually happened, and the good thing about this, is people in Britain are not putting up with it, right? Very calmly and very diligently in councils and local authorities up and down the country, people are not disrupting people's sports events or stopping them in their traffic. What they're doing is they're campaigning with councillors, with shopkeepers, with residents, people that are disabled. They're saying, we're not going to have these LTNs there. They've already had to do a U-turn in Canterbury. We've had them taken out in Warrington. There are people up and down the gate. And I'm saying to you that the people in Britain do not want these measures imposed.
Well, actually,
if you want to win the argument with people, then you need to democratically convince people why they should be shut down. Not impose and do them by disregarding what people want. So you haven't won the argument. You haven't won hearts and minds. You can keep telling everyone at the end is nice. But if you haven't, that's what you do in a democratic country.
Okay. Donnachadh, on that point, Donnachadh, I mean, there is a real sense that, you know, Alan is right here in that if you stop people on the street and ask the average, look, do you want cleaner air? Everybody says, yeah, of course we want cleaner air. But there are lots of ways to get to cleaner air. There's lots of ways of doing it, and there's lots of factors that are responsible for cleaner air. I mean, if you go down, I'm sure you have a convenient answer for this, but if you go down onto the London Underground, you'll find that the air pollution is, 100 times worse than anything on the overground, for goodness sake. So there's a massive problem there. If you've got electric cars, clearly we are improving the air. We use less oil than we ever have done, so there's that as well. We're going in the right direction. Surely this sledgehammer approach, this alarmist approach that you're putting forward is not the way to get people on side.
I don't think it's alarmist to say that actually the University of Westminster's research says you triple the crash rate if you reopen a restaurant through an LTN. And as regards the point that Alan says, yes, there are people who oppose LTNs, but if you look at national polling, there's a clear majority of the public supports low traffic neighbourhoods. And in London, it's a massive majority, around 52 to 17%. And yes, there have been a couple of councils across the country where people democratically voted to reverse the LTNs. But there have been numerous all over the country, vast majority of places where elections did take place, where LTNs were on the ballot. and the councillors who proposed them were re-elected. Say, a place like Waltham Forest, many councils in London, in Southwark, in Islington, etc., where the council stood on the platform of making our streets safe for children, and the public voted for them, both in elections and in polling.
Alan?
Yeah, the public haven't voted for that. There's all sorts of reasons why in Islington people get voted back in, but we'll see now, won't we? Because now it's all bets are off. Because what was happening was when people were first standing in election, and this is happening very, very recently, people were saying, you can't really be serious. They're not going to try and shut all these roads down. I think you're a little bit like, that's off the mark. People who are standing in East London and Hoxton on these points. This is what they were doing. They've now come out unequivocally and said it. The mayor of Hackney, 75% streets. Islington are saying 70% of the streets. We're now seeing what's happening. We saw what happened in Uxbridge. We're seeing it up and down the country. We're seeing what's happening with ULEZ. And what's going to happen is that people need to be able to have innovation. They need better housing, better pay. We need to get on with wealth creation for everyone, not restrictions and impositions undemocratically imposed. None of these measures have been agreed upon by the public and the constituents, right? It's a complete fallacy that they're popular. If you're going to start citing polls, right, which have things like Hackney's poll, which had their thing on their site, where about 1,000 people responded in a constituency of 280,000. It's preposterous, right? And like with the Imperial research, and I encourage people to look at our report, TogetherDeclaration.org, which actually shows what the report says, and the fact that TfL and Mayor Sadiq Khan have been lying about 4,000 deaths. People are fed up of this. Let's have a calm debate and a discussion about costs and benefits, what's required, and how we do things. And I'd encourage everyone to have their voices heard and let their MPs and councillors know.
Isn't that fair enough, Donnachadh? Just a final point from you. That sounds very democratic that Alan's offering. Maybe you should sign up for the Together Declaration, Donnachadh.
Well, actually, I agree.
Be a nice marriage here.
Well, actually, as I say, democratic, these things have been voted across the country, and many LTNs have been democratically endorsed. However, there is a point where we can end on an agreement. We do need better housing. We do need cheaper energy. And what the right-wing media have done is they fought against the insulation programme, which would have insulated 9 million homes by now and 9 million families this winter because of the attack on net zero insulation. Those 9 million people had to pay extra costs on their bills. And secondly, that they also are attacking onshore wind. We're the only nation in the world that bans onshore wind, which is the cheapest form of energy and the greenest form of energy. And Rishi Sunak is out there giving £20 billion in subsidies to Shell to store away their carbon pollution. And we should be investing, hopefully Alan and I can agree on that 20 billion could be far better spent insulating people's homes and reducing their bills.
On that point, gentlemen, we have to stop. We could go on for much longer. Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration, and Donnachadh McCarthy, the climate columnist, with us here on TalkTV.